conditions, whether that be the weather, the cold, whatever it is. The fact that at some points during the last week it's been difficult to bring in food. So a lot of people have been sharing what they have. It's been the same kind of food, mainly bread and falafel and cheese, and that's what everyone's been eating. So although it's been very, very difficult for them, they have maintained, or they've tried to maintain, this momentum in the square by constantly having these events, whether it's face painting, whether it's a DJ singing. They really try and boost the morale of the people. I met a man yesterday who had a skin condition on his hand, and he was saying, it's because I've been here for so many days sleeping on the floor and now my skin's reacting. But he didn't leave. He just went to one of the clinics that have been set up inside the square. So there is this idea that we are here for the long run, and we will not leave this square until our demands are met.
All right, thank you very much for now. We'll be coming back to you for an update in just a few minutes. Right now, let's speak to a protester, a pro-democracy activist who I understand is outside of the Parliament building in Cairo. Her name is Maha Al-Aswad. Maha, thank you very much for speaking to us. Just give us a sense of what's happening outside the Parliament building. How many of you are out there?
We're about a group of 1,000 protesters, and we are in the street, in the People's Assembly Street, Majlis Al-Sha'ab Street. And we're just protesting there peacefully, and some of us are praying now because it's prayer time.
Is there any law enforcement around you? Is the army visible, present at all outside the Parliament building?
The army units are there right in front of the gate. We're not trying to break into the gate or anything. We're just protesting there peacefully, and they're negotiating with some of us to leave, but we're refusing to.
As you know, the main protests have been taking place in Tahrir Square, Liberation Square. What made you decide to head to the Parliament building?
Personally, I heard there was a protest in Rosa Youssef magazine against its editor-in-chief, Abdullah Kamel. You know, Rosa Youssef magazine is a government-affiliated magazine. And so I went there just to see it because I didn't believe it. Like, journalists there are protesting against Abdullah Kamel. And so I went there to witness it. And then on my way back, I found some of the protesters there in front of the People's Assembly gate. So I decided to join them.
So you say 1,000 people where you are. Give us an idea of who exactly is there. Is it young people? Is it an older crowd? And what are they?
Mostly, well, all categories of people in all ages, but mostly youth.
Mostly youth. Okay. Do you know of other protests besides that one outside the Parliament there and Tahrir Square? Are there other demonstrations taking place elsewhere in Cairo?
Yeah, as I told you now, there's a protest going on inside Rosa Youssef magazine. Again, it's editor-in-chief, Abdullah Kamel. And I heard, and a witness there, a protester there also told me that there was one earlier this morning in a court, South Cairo court. But of course, I don't know if these information are true or not, but he told me that there was people working in this court were protesting against the head of the court himself.
How determined are you still, Maha, to continue with these demonstrations, even though President Mubarak is still in power? How much longer are you willing to go on?
Until he leaves.
Okay, thank you very much for speaking to us. That was pro-democracy activist Maha Al-Aswad joining us on the line from outside the Parliament building in Cairo, where demonstrations is also underway this Tuesday. Right now you're watching the live pictures from Tahrir Square, Liberation Square, which has been really ground zero for these anti-Mubarak demonstrations. Well, President Mubarak, meanwhile, has moved to enforce the idea that is not going anywhere just yet by holding an official meeting with a foreign dignitary. As Al Jazeera's Alan Fisher explains now.
The man they want out is trying to show things are changing in Egypt. President Mubarak has been meeting the foreign minister for the United Arab Emirates and also announcing a roadmap for changes. He set up 3 committees. The first will look at constitutional reform, what needs to be done and when. The second will investigate the violence against anti-Mubarak protesters. And the third is aimed at getting as many people together as possible to discuss the country's future.
Today, the President signed a presidential decree for the formation of the Constitutional Committee to carry out necessary amendments to the Constitution and the parallel legislative amendments. He also instructed the Prime Minister to form the steering committee to follow up with the precise implementation of the agreements reached by the parties to the national dialogue, and a third fact-finding committee on the incidents and clashes of Wednesday last, and to refer the outcomes to the Chief Prosecutor to take necessary actions.
For the protesters in Liberation Square, it's not enough. They want the president and the government to go now, free elections, a whole new beginning. That's why thousands are expected to join the latest demonstration.
Thousands of people that come here every day, despite the rain, the cold, the violence that we've had a couple of days with the thugs, and even with the negative media propaganda, it's not keeping people at home.
The protesters want a big show of strength. They know things across the city are returning to normal. Their demonstrations in danger of losing momentum.
Solidarity is so high, and everybody's trying to help us. So we've managed to counter all of their attempts to make sitting in Tahrir a miserable act. In fact, it's a very glorious moment.
President Mubarak has survived the immediate storm over his leadership, but the protesters believe they can still create the conditions where he will have no option but to stand down. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera.
Well, that is a view from Tahrir Square, Liberation Square in Cairo, where, as you can see on those pictures, once again, tens of thousands have gathered again, demanding that Mubarak stands now, still chanting the same chants. We've got our correspondent, Shireen Tadros, overlooking Tahrir Square there. Shireen, I just want to ask you about the other demonstrations that we've been hearing of. We heard a pro-democracy activist come on the line to us just a few minutes ago saying that there were about 1,000 people demonstrating outside the Parliament building. She also mentioned a journalist demonstrating against Abdallah Kamal, who's the editor-in-chief of Rose Al Yusuf, a magazine there. How significant is it that the protests are moving away from Tahrir now?
Well, yes, I think that because we can see so many people out on the street, it's not surprising that some groups decide to voice their concerns and voice their demands in different places. The Tahrir Square itself right now is the epicenter. It's where everyone meets up and it's where they come to at the end. But that doesn't mean that that is the only place that people feel like their demands are going to be told to the rest of the world. So yes, a lot of people, we are hearing more and more, are meeting up in groups and going to different places. They're trying to get their voices heard. They're trying to send a message that this is a popular revolution, that it's coming from below, and that there are different kinds of demands. And that's why we're seeing teachers, lawyers, doctors within their own unions, within their own syndicates, come out as one, as a kind of unity, and show that across the sections of society, people have demands, and demands that must be met.
Indeed. It's interesting to see that the journalists are also now coming out to protest against people who they view as cronies of the regime. Let's just talk more about the scene in Tahrir. Shireen, you were telling us earlier about how difficult it was for you to get out of the square. Give us a sense of what's happening around Tahrir. Is it easy at all for people to get in and out?
Just from the volume of people trying to get in and out, in fact, it's very difficult to be moving in and out. And that really was expected, with so many people trying to move about, and the military restricting the areas with which you can enter the square. It's normal that I think that these long queues, as we can see behind me, have formed. The military are so far really trying to take a step back. They're almost trying to take the lead from the protesters themselves, who so far have been very organized in getting people in and out. In fact, when we were going out, because there weren't actually very many people coming out, most of the flow was obviously going into the square, they managed to line us all up and hold the bars so that nobody got hurt. And I think that the key in all of this is the goodwill of the people. Everybody is in a good mood. They want to be inside the square. They want to share in this day. And so there isn't that kind of tension that you find if you're trying to queue at a supermarket or at a bank. There really wasn't wasn't that kind of feeling. Everyone was together in their understanding that these security measures are necessary to keep the peace inside the square.
And certainly it doesn't look like the tension that we saw last week, Shireen, when the pro-Mubarak supporters also made it to Tahrir Square is there. The situation much more peaceful, it seems now. Let me just ask you, we know that the government has been very keen to project an air of normalcy in Cairo in the last 2 days or so. Away from Tahrir Square itself, what's the scene like? Has life been getting back to normal?
Well, if you ignore the curfew and the army tanks on the streets, then you could say that. But I think that everyone is aware that something is happening. There's no way that anyone can be going around their daily lives without any kind of effect to their day. If even